And because no one had ever done anything like this before, no one was ever in the position to realise the continuity of English history. If you write history from secondary sources, from novels, even diaries, and things like this, if you don't follow through one place in detail, through the records, you never get the strong sense of how houses have remained the same, fields have remained the same, patterns of law have remained the same, patterns of social relations have remained the same. And so it wasn't surprising that all sorts of historians and quasi-historians like Perry Anderson and Karl Marx and others had totally misunderstood English history. They had come to believe that England, being the first capitalist society, had switched from feudal peasant society to capitalism in the 16th century. People like R.H. Tawney, Christopher Hill, all my teachers had believed this because they'd never done a detailed long-term study of one place in enough depth. They'd never gone back to the original sources. It was rather like the early anthropologists of China, who did all their Chinese anthropology from Hong Kong and Taiwan, because you couldn't go into China. You were doing it second-hand. You were guessing what China was like. Well, these historians were guessing what the Middle Ages and the late Middle Ages and the early modern period were like, largely from secondary sources or just wisps and fragments which they put together with their imaginations and invented a whole capitalist revolution and movement to individualism, which, when you actually looked at the records and you said, where, at what point in this continuous long series of documents, when is the break? You know, is it the 16th century? No. Is it the 17th century? No. Is it the 15th century? No. It's one continuous snake or serpent. George Orwell describes it, the changing same, a continuous flow. It's like a river, and you can't say at this point the river suddenly changes from one river into another. Now, no one had ever really understood this. The only person who deeply understood it was F.W. Maitland, who was very influential on my work, because he was the other person, one of the few people who'd actually gone into the records, edited records, looked at manorial records, and he knew that medieval law, social structure, mentality in England was very similar to the world that he saw in Cambridge in the late 19th century. So Maitland had said all this. Then Maitland's vision at the end of the 19th century had been forgotten. The Marxists had come along and others and invented the modern world, made it happen in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, the great watershed. And all that I'd been taught at school and university had, a lot of it had confirmed this, although I had had a history master who had thrown some doubt on this, Andrew Morgan, who was very influential on me. And also my medieval tutor at Oxford had thrown doubt on this, but I had forgotten their warnings and come to believe, as if you go around the streets, everyone, and you say when to someone educated, when did capitalism and the modern world emerge, they'll say, oh, 17th, 18th century, you know, the English Revolution, that's at the time. Well, it's nonsense, and we only found it was nonsense by studying Earls Colne.